What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to bring you guys the current template team within the overall rankings, or the entire overall rankings for the upcoming Game Week 12. So in this video, I'll be covering the most highly owned players within the overall rankings and creating a team which is going to be a representation of what the current FPL landscape is looking at for Game Week 12. So that's something you guys are interested in? Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So before we get into the actual team and the template team, I just wanted to give you guys an indication that I have removed the inactive squads from this specific template team. I didn't individually take them out thanks to Fantasy Football Fix. They have a little bit of a slider that allows you to take these inactive squads out, and I just think that these inactive teams don't really replicate or represent what the current landscape does entail, and that's why I took them out. And you guys can see on screen there, a massive percentage of managers are currently inactive, and that's going to account for 26.3% of the current player base. So you guys can work that out on your own. If you take the total players, you just times it by this percentage, that's going to give you the total managers that are currently inactive. And I think, as far as I understand with the definition of inactive, that means that these managers haven't made a transfer in the last 5 game weeks. And I mean, just imagine that. I want to not take a hit basically every game week, so imagine not making transfers within 5 game weeks. I think that's a good indication that these managers are inactive. And I just wanted to put this out there so you guys aren't confused when you look at overall ownership statistics on FPL's website. But now going on to the actual template team within the overall rankings. If you guys have not watched, I either will be releasing the video after this or I might have released it before this, but I went over the top 1000 managers template team. I just want to give you guys some clarity on these two selections depending on where you guys are in the overall rankings, because I mean, a player within the top 2 million isn't going to be looking at the top 1000, and a player within the top 1000 might not be looking at the overall ownerships. But before we get onto the bench, I just want to give a shout out to Fantasy Football Fix, who actually create this team for you guys. They create both the top 1000 template and the overall template team. So you guys can go check them out using the link down in the description below. But starting off with the bench, like I always do, I'm going to start off with a goalkeeper that we all do know. It's going to be Ben Foster from Watford. So currently owned by just below 25% of the active teams. It might be a little bit surprising to me, considering that I thought most managers would own Ben Foster, considering how cheap he is for a second goalkeeper. But this might be an indication of the overall rankings where we're not all the same, and on FPL Twitter and FPL Reddit, it's a little bit of a bubble that is not always a representation of the overall team selections. The next few options though are pretty template for budget enablers. We have Duffy, Basuma, and then also Marty. Marty's actually been starting for Leicester over these last couple game weeks. So if you guys do still own him from that early run he had at the start of the season, I think you guys might get some profit out of there because Leicester have some nice fixtures coming up. But Duffy, Basuma, nothing much to add on there, are going to be in the starting 11 for Brighton probably most game weeks, unless all the centre backs are fit for Brighton, then maybe there might be some rotation with Duffy. But now that the bench is covered, you can see that it's super cheap, super budget enabler. But now going to the starting 11, which is a lot more exciting, we're going to start off with the goalkeeper, which was a little bit of a surprise for me. So coming in with 21% of ownership is going to be Mendy from Chelsea. It's a little bit surprising there, considering the fact that you probably can get an outfielder from Chelsea instead of Mendy at the same price. But maybe these FPL managers don't want to spend that extra value on a player that might actually not start. Tuchel has shown that Chelsea defense will have some rotation, and that's why it might be good just going with the safe option, but then you are relying on only clean sheets. But now going on to the next Chelsea defender with 22.5% of ownership, that's going to be Reese James. So currently just edges Ben Chilwell in the overall predictions, but I think that's just because of the form that Reese James has had over these last couple game weeks. So unlike Benjamin Mendy with Reese James, you're almost relying on those attacking returns, as we saw in Game Week 11, assisting Havertz for that goal against Burnley. So even though he didn't get a clean sheet, he still managed to come out of the game with 7 points. But that's nothing compared to our next two options, Trent Alexander-Arnold and also João Cancelo. So both these two players come in with about 30% to 31% ownership, and I think that's going to be a real representation over these next couple game weeks, and that ownership is only going to skyrocket. So Trent, Cancelo both ending the game week with double-digit returns, Trent getting an assist and a goal, and I think João Cancelo got 2 assists and bonus points as well as a clean sheet, but you guys can correct me if I am wrong on that one. But the moral of the story is both these two assets are simply outstanding, and you're not only relying on those defensive returns, you are getting some attacking returns to boot. So overall, if I had to pick my 3 defenders to go for in FPL, these would be my 3 favorite options, and if you guys do own these 3, I think the next couple game weeks will be quite profitable for you. Going on to our midfield department, we do have Mo Salah there with quite a high ownership, not really as high as I'm expecting it to be in the overall rankings, especially for you active managers, but maybe there's some of you that didn't have Mo Salah and don't want to kind of get him in because you think there's better options in and around that price point. But Mo Salah, one of the more essential players to own. Not going to kind of talk about him too long because I think most managers do already own him. The other three options, there might be some variation though. I'm going to start off with Rafinha on the left-hand side there. So Rafinha for Leeds has actually produced some nice returns over these last 2 game weeks, and as I mentioned in kind of the top 1000 template, don't really know how consistent these returns will be. Rafinha never kind of wants to get a double-digit haul, but I think 9 points, 8 points, you guys definitely will take that considering that Leeds aren't as free scoring as they have been. But Rafinha's ownership comes in just below that 22% mark, and a great option maybe coming up. I know the Leeds fixtures don't look that strong, but I still think that Leeds with their attacking ways, Rafinha with his quality can still end up getting some attacking returns. Benrahma then comes in here with quite a high ownership of 35%. I think this is kind of a factor of most managers having him the past couple game weeks, or at least when West Ham were doing quite well. But since then, I don't think Benrahma, as with Antonio, maybe the returns haven't been to the liking of his owners, just considering the fact that West Ham have scored so many goals. I think that Benrahma, especially Antonio, haven't really been involved in those too much. So right now, I think that Bowen might be the better midfielder to go for if you guys do want to bring a West Ham midfielder in, as I just think that he's looking slightly better than his kind of counterpart Benrahma. But still quite a high ownership there. I think that most of these managers will probably keep him or ship him out for someone else because I think that West Ham fixtures only get stronger in about 4 game weeks time. The final player to talk about is going to be a player that I brought into my own team for Game Week 11, and that's going to be Smith Rowe. So great form currently. I think he's got hauls in the last 3 or 4 game weeks. So I think it just shows you the form that Arsenal and Smith Rowe are on for the current moment. And I definitely think if you guys want to get a nice cheap midfielder option, he's definitely kind of pulling his weight in gold. So 25.5% of ownership is quite high, but I think it's only going to kind of grow considering the form that Smith Rowe has shown. And I think you guys should maybe look at him if you do want to bring in an Arsenal option. And then finally, go into our front 3. We've got to Jamie Vardy, also Ivan Toney, and then finally Antonio. So quite a template front 3, to be honest. I think I've seen this in quite a few managers' teams over on FPL Twitter, but I think this is going to kind of shake up within these next couple game weeks. Not only do we have Harry Kane kind of entering the frame with some great fixtures coming up, but then in game week 15, we also have that kind of fixture swing for Manchester United. So a certain CR7, Cristiano Ronaldo, I think is going to be on most kind of FPL managers' minds. So I think that Vardy to Ronaldo or Vardy to Kane is going to be quite a popular transfer over these next couple game weeks. But with Jamie Vardy, Leicester do have some nice fixtures coming up like a Marty. So I think if you guys want to hold on to him, I think that you just kind of have to hope that he starts, because against this easier opposition, I'm expecting the English striker to do quite well. Ivan Toney unfortunately didn't have a great game against Norwich in game week 11. I think it's going to kind of turn most managers away from him, but the returns haven't been that strong this FPL season, and I think in general the Premier League season hasn't been that great for Toney. However, I do think that his form is going to pick up as long as Brentford kind of keep up this attacking form, but they have slipped slightly due to all these injuries. And then the final player to talk about, Antonio, as I mentioned with Benrahma, kind of an option that has some tough fixtures coming up over these next 5 game weeks. And although West Ham have been quite free scoring, 3 against Liverpool, 4 against Aston Villa, unfortunately Antonio just hasn't produced the goods. So I don't really know the reason for that. Maybe he's dropped off slightly more. Maybe the teams they're playing are favoring the counter-attack, and maybe Antonio isn't getting as involved as he used to. But I just really hope that Antonio picks up the form, as I did manage to keep him for these next couple game weeks. And I just hope against the better opposition, maybe you can see the real Antonio shine. But overall, the template looks quite template, to be honest. I think it looks quite strong though, especially the defensive department. And what I want you guys to do is comment down below, how many of these players do you guys own? How many are you looking to bring in? And how many are you looking to maybe ship out for some other alternatives? Always like to see what your guys are kind of setting up. And if you are mega differential, I always like to see what options you guys are opting for. But this is basically wrap the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you're new and not subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for the normal content coming up next week, the ultimate guides, the team selections. So hopefully you guys are enjoying this international break and maybe getting a break of FPL, but not my FPL content. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.